happy 15 years of our Katiba, and salute to every person, every leader, every citizen that is doing their best to make sure that our constitution holds and that the law is very clear.
For me, the biggest highlight of the 2010 constitution is how it really laid out our rights.
It puts people first, that sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya.
It's really expounded on the responsibilities of the leaders that get in. It's expounded on our duties. It's expounded on all the things that we deserve.
Of course, there's also a new crop of leaders that have come up from counties, especially young people.
Phoebe really set the path for us to be able to even say that we have a constitution that really has the two-third gender rule written in it.
And she defied odds to run for office.
True.
And because she won that Karatonyo MP seat, hats off to that woman.
Yeah. So kudos to Senator Crystal. She is showing that, you know what, new people that have not been in these spaces can come in and imagine they can do it. We kind of just need to take a chance on them.
We do.
Hi everyone, welcome to yet another episode of the Journey and Fields podcast. My name is Mwende.
And my name is Stella. And today we are excited to be talking about something that really is dear to our hearts, but most importantly, that is a central part of our Republic of Kenya. 15 years ago, and this week, as we celebrate 15 years of our Constitution, we want to look back at some of the milestones that we've achieved as a country, some of the key highlights of the new constitution, of the 2010 constitution, as well as some of the challenges that we continue to face as a country. And so I think the best place to start would be, what do you remember most about the constitution? The new constitution?
The new constitution, we the people. I feel like that's the first thing that this constitution really highlighted.
Yeah.
It gave power back to the people because the previous constitution, the power was really with the state. So that's like one of the biggest things, and it really set the tone because everything from there is a spiral effect. And I think this is why probably today politicians do not sleep in peace because they never know when we are coming.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, I still remember that referendum, the second one now. Of course, I wasn't a voter yet, but I remember the seriousness with which it was taken even at home. Because I remember my parents going out to vote, and I knew, of course, they were supporting. Yeah. And then thereafter, just seeing the news and how it was such a big deal. And I remember, I think it was about over 60% of voters supporting this constitution. And so, yeah, it's still not, I don't think it will ever be a small deal. It's really a big deal. Yeah. One of my highlights from the constitution is, of course, I have a couple of things, but of course, public participation. Again, like you said, with the people, that sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya, and that the people in governance, the duty bearers, cannot just proceed with development processes, although we've seen that happen now without the people. And then the other highlight for me is devolution.
Yeah.
Just seeing how different things that are so important, like health being devolved, and seeing some of the changes that have happened in the counties. You know, like now, as a Moranga person, there's been so much development in the county, and not just in terms of devolved functions like health, but also just general development. Yeah. You know, even decentralizing expertise from the city to the different counties. And having worked in a youth and devolution project, I do see how it continues to open up the country, create opportunities. However, of course, there are challenges. Yeah. What else stood out for you or stands out for you?
Actually, I want to build up on something that you were saying, that, the seriousness that this was taken with is because, and that's the thing, young people, if you're not reading up and if you're not aware, there's a lot of privilege that we currently have just by virtue of living in an era where we had a constitution that allows us to really just be and have a voice. Because back then, I think our parents, our grandparents have seen a world where they would not even, the way these people say must go. That would not even have been said. Let me tell you, even in the comfort of your bedroom. My mom used to tell me that for them at that time, it was the real definition of walls have ears. So then, just looking at that and coming from that and then coming to a point where there's a lot of freedom, you really sometimes I think we forget or we take for granted what that means, because back then people even never used to speak up. And I think even just that power being given back to the people now means that, you know what, if you sit in a matatu and the conductor does not want to give you your change, you know that you're empowered enough to be like, where ebu ita uyo nipatie change yangu. Or when they try tell you, you know, we have to sit for view, you can say no, and nothing will happen. So there's a huge spiral effect that has sort of just happened with that. And with the other thing that you were talking about when it comes to devolution, a lot of people say that actually this 2010 constitution is very expensive. But then I sit and I'm like, the number of scandals that we normally see. I think I was seeing Nini Nyoro was talking about how, for example, fuel prices are now high because the government, was it that it borrowed? I even need to check on the statistics, but it was something around over 150 billion that the government had sort of borrowed to sort of be able to, like, basically we're in debt. So fuel prices need to be high because of that. And when you look at small things like that, to me, I'm like, it looks expensive, but also there's a lot of money that is being siphoned from the people of Kenya. We are being stolen from because we are paying taxes, but then we are not getting the services that we need. And I also feel like it's only been 15 years. It will take a very long time. Well, let me not say a very long time, but it will take time because we were used to doing things in a very, very specific way. And I kind of feel like even the people that are getting into leadership, right now, I feel confident that some of the people that will get into leadership in 2027 will be better leaders by virtue of, you know, learning, seeing what is happening, being annoyed about things. We just hope that the system will allow them to be and to exercise their leadership in the right way. So then, when you talk about devolution, it's even just the happiness in terms of how people are experiencing their lives now. The fact that you don't need to, I mean, I know that now people still have to come to Kenyatta for some medical services. However, if you are really, really sick, there is somewhere you can go that is closest to you. And I think those are some of the things that devolution has brought about, that there is someone at a localized level that is thinking about how do I continue to improve the experience of life for people here. Me, I can tell you, we are like, my shags, we are like one of the biggest people that have benefited generally from devolution because even access across the counties in the eastern province, or rather before, is quite easier because with devolution there was a road that was built that then now meant that me going to Shags takes me 2 hours or less. Back then it would take me, or rather it would take us like 5 hours. The roads were so bad. I think at some point we had to get out of the vehicle to Pangwe Tena, according to weight, according to whatever. And it's a place that is so close. And let me tell you, it might look like such a small thing, but the way it has improved the quality of people's lives, I think those are some of the things that we need to continue reminding ourselves about, because if we don't remind ourselves about where we came from, and especially for the people that are younger, it is our job to continue learning about where that we came from, so that then we are able to safeguard what our constitution is and all the benefits that it has brought. Because if we are not paying attention, a lot could possibly happen that would really set us back.
I agree with what you say, that sometimes we take some of these things that we look at as small for granted. In Murang'a, for instance, I don't think we had an intensive care unit before devolution. We now do, and that makes such a difference to communities that especially cannot afford to come all the way to the city. I do know of a county that had their first maternity ward because of devolution. So that we even have expertise in the counties. We have a whole minister who sits in the cabinet at county level that is in charge of education, in charge of health. It definitely makes a difference because then research is more informed. And the best thing about devolution is that it's not just devolving functions, it's also devolving resources. I don't think there is a county now that receives less than 4 to 5 billion every year. And I know that, of course, one of the challenges has been that funds are not devolved in good time and all, but in terms of like annual budgets, for sure there is money going into the counties. And of course, there's also a new crop of leaders that have come up from counties, especially young people. we've now had, I think, 7 to 8 or 9 governors who are women. And again, that also speaks to the increase in women's leadership, because a gubernatorial role, a governor role, is not a small role.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in charge of quite a number of people. You're in charge of the jurisdiction of a governor is quite a lot. And that definitely opens up different things. When I look at education, for instance, and by the way, my dissertation was on education, and I was looking at the impact of devolution on early childhood education, a lot has happened.
Yeah.
A lot has changed in Kenya. And again, I see devolution as such a big policy area for not just the older professionals, because again, one of the areas that, of course, maybe we can discuss later is that devolution also opened up for the older folks in politics to also take over counties, and it has had its own benefits and demerits. However, I see a lot of educational reforms that have happened at the county in terms of even uplifting or like just changing how county polytechnics work, changing how early childhood education works as well. A lot of ECDEs now have really, like parents feel proud that, yeah, I'm paying tax and I can see where my money is going. So devolution has had such a big impact in the development of Kenya, and all thanks to the constitution.
True.
Yeah.
And actually, Stella, speaking of education, did you see the CS trying to say that now the government cannot afford free education?
We need to talk.
I know, right? Another day, another crisis. Anyway. But those are things that when I look at it, I'm grateful that one of the things that we have to fall back on is the constitution, because it talks about access to education.
As a right.
Yeah, as a right. So then for me, if you come and tell us that you cannot afford it, what have you done to try and make sure that you can afford it?
And what have you cut? What have you cut in other areas?
True.
Yeah.
Because we still have a long way to go in terms of access to that education. And even with the free education policy, it is still, there's it being free, but is it accessible? So there's still a long way to go. And like, for me, I'm hoping that this is not something that comes to pass, because then I look at it as a setback. If you look at, there's a huge population that was educated at that time, when the free education policy came about, more people were going to school. So it helped, first of all, by making it accessible in some ways. But then even as we continue to think about devolution and some of the things that you've mentioned, late disbursement of funds, and so on and so forth, and all those other challenges that are coming up, to me, I feel like education is like one of the most basic rights: education, healthcare, people's security, all the rights that are related to food. Like, to me, those are such basic rights and basic needs that if I was a leader making decisions on what to cut, best believe that will not be the first thing that I would touch. But then, we never know. Let's just keep watching. But if that was not something that you knew, please make sure that you read up on it and know what you can do to have your voice heard.
Let's talk a bit about that. One of the provisions in our constitution is checks and balances. And the constitution is very clear, which is a Kenyan saying. Kenyans like to say, the law is very clear. The constitution is very clear. But is it, especially for our leaders who should be custodians of the constitution? One of the provisions is the role of a member of parliament, oversight, representation. And what's the third one?
They should be making sure, actually, that these rights that we have in the constitution are being upheld. And I think that's the thing that these leaders forget. They get in, and then now it's like, oh, me, I'm an MP. I will do my best that I can possibly do. But I don't know that they are accountable to us, or that they remember that they're accountable to us.
And just holding some of these CSs accountable. I mean, there is no way two cabinet secretaries could be speaking a different language about provisions and allocation of resources to education. Yet no MP, no member of parliament have I had hold them to account and ask them, I mean, why is this the case? What do you mean? And by the way, we must remember that this allocation of funds does not happen without going through parliament. So at the end of the day, we need to have a serious conversation with our members of parliament to ask, what were you doing so that now you're acting so shocked? As if you had no idea.
You're also shocked like us.
You're also so shocked.
We sent you there. Why
and by the way, when the CS in charge of Treasury went to Parliament, a good number of members of Parliament were not even in Parliament. it reminds me of what used to happen when we were talking about the two-thirds gender rule, you know, that a good chunk of members of parliament will not appear just because they don't want to vote or just because they've been compromised. So I really celebrate what the Constitution provides. However, there's a big challenge. And it's mostly with our representatives. And also, the lack of knowledge among citizens to also ask. You're telling us that there's no money for our schools and for our children. Just the fact that you need to know that you have the right to go to your member of parliament and ask, what have you done? The CS is saying that there's no money for education. We want to hear you. What's your take on this? You know, But to be honest, in terms of representation and oversight, we are doing so badly.
And I think one thing that we need to remember, especially when it comes to our role, the duties that we play when it comes to checks and balances, we need to remember that with the devolved function, there are some functions that are placed to the county government and some functions that are placed to the national government. So please make sure that you go read up on that so that then you're not blaming the wrong politician, because each of those functions, the National Assembly and the County Assembly, they all have their different decision-making levels, and then they also have different ways in which they are resourced. So let's just keep reading up on that, because it's our duty, honestly. We cannot be sitting here with lack of knowledge and then we keep complaining, because we complain that our leaders are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, but are we also doing what you're supposed to be doing to be staying informed? Are we also doing what we're supposed to be doing so that then we know when it is time to say no, or to sort of stop things before they get worse. And Stella, there's something else that you've mentioned, which is also another benefit that the 2010, my God, Constitution brought up, the 2010 brought about, which is the two-third gender rule, which we are yet to achieve.
Unfortunately.
And for those that might not understand what the two-third gender rule means, it just says that there has to be at least one-third representation of the minority gender in leadership. So then if we are looking at our parliament and we are trying to assess the representation between men and women, ideally they should be at least one-third of either men or one-third of either women in our political seats. We are yet to achieve that. I feel like we are still far from achieving that due to various reasons. Some of the reasons for me, I feel like, are a cultural issue, because I feel like when it comes to women being in leadership, they are held to a higher pedestal. And honestly, sometimes when people start saying, oh, the women reps are not doing anything. Yes, to be honest, sometimes they are doing nothing. However, I ask myself, who are we comparing them to? I think we talked about this in another episode. The men that are also throwing jabs, fighting and throwing chairs at each other. I mean, I feel like corruption has been there even when we had less women in leadership. But now, because this was something that was specifically created to make sure that there is a balance or that there is representation, people now want to start castigating the women that are in leadership, but we don't understand the kind of challenges that they are facing. And we should really try and watch a lot of videos when they're talking about how you try and speak up in parliament and imagine people don't want to listen to you. Or decisions are still being made in boys' clubs and you're there with them. You're supposed to be in that assembly as well, all the way going back to even how party politics are being handled. So there's just a lot of things, but then that's a celebrated win, because then what that means is that whatever the context, whether men are the minority, whether women are the minority, girls, boys, whatever gender is the minority, the two-third gender rule just makes sure that the needs of the minority are also placed at the core by virtue of them being given a seat at the table. And the Constitution goes further and provides for affirmative action, which is why we have the women's representative seat. And I think it's so important. I mean, we have to look at examples. The governor of Homa Bay, for instance, Gladys Wanga, was once a woman representative and now she's governor. So it does definitely raise the ground for women to be able to also
be more visible, exercise their leadership even, and be seen, and also as a proof of concept that, yeah, she's done this, and so she can move to the next level. So that's one thing that I think we need to understand. The other thing is also thinking about the minoritized groups and the minority groups like persons with disability. And by the way, shout out to Senator Crystal for the new disability law that she's been championing.
Yeah.
And I was so happy that it's finally a law because the law provides for representation and the inclusion of persons with disability, even in organizations. For instance, one of the highlights is that if your organization, your company or institution has more than 20 employees, then 5% of those employees should be persons with disability. And I really like that because it makes people be more intentional. And then it can always be reviewed, like maybe one day get to 10%, because I know that there are so many persons with disability who are qualified for jobs, but also who have the right to access some of these opportunities that we do not have. However, the rollbacks that we see now in terms of affirmative action is actually a full episode that we need to discuss. How people have abused affirmative action, including the intentional nomination of people who are not competent enough to be in these affirmative action roles. And I am a big supporter of the women representative role, for instance, and the position and the office. I know that it has had a lot of impact in terms of the lives of students, for instance. Like that role actually gives a lot of bursaries and funds. And although I have a different opinion about bursaries, but I know that a lot of people have gone through school to completion because of this role. But I see a lot of, let me call it madness, in a lot of pronouncements by people holding these roles. I mean, the other day we heard the Wajir woman rep talk about how elections will be rigged. And what that does is that it rolls back all the benefits and all the gains that we've had, because guys will be like, okay, you told us that you need a woman rep, right? Look at what she's doing. The Nairobi woman rep again is on record actually championing a bill that suppresses the right to protest in this country, knowing too well how the women's rights movement has always protested against the same laws that do not, and the same practices that do not serve us well.
And the things that now allow for her to even be a woman leader.
I mean, we have to talk about affirmative action, but we also have to talk about why those sitting in those roles must give dignity and respect and good visibility for these roles. Otherwise, it costs us more, and we can't then have more affirmative action, like in peace or just like with more appreciation, because of some of these things that are being done by these representatives. So we have to also acknowledge that, we must do better, especially for leaders representing women and leaders in roles that actually speak to women's leadership, because of course we know that it's scrutinized on a different yardstick. And I think for me, the point just remains that we need to do our job to put the right leaders in place, whether men, whether women. Like, to me, those are, the gender is a non-issue. It is the qualities of that person. So then it goes back to us. Actually, in the way that we say the Constitution has given us the power, it's also given us the responsibility. We also can't be all talk. And that's why we need to be very, very serious to make sure that the people that are representing us in these seats are the right people. Because when we have the wrong people representing us, look at the effects. I mean, someone might listen to what Pasari says and they take it for Bible. And then now, the leader.
And then that is a voter. That is a voter. So then, or what the Wajir MP said, someone might take it for Bible and that is a voter. Then that becomes one vote that is compromised. So then we need to get back to that point where we remember that we also have responsibilities. And when we were talking about Senator Crystal, it's a reminder of this is what happens when you bring fresh minds. Competent people. Like, I feel like we need to take a chance. Let's take a chance on the younger people. Let's take a chance on people that have not been in politics. Because, I mean, if we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people that are coming in with fresh ideas, we are closer to achieving some good politics for us, to be able to enjoy our rights. We are closer to having a government that really meets our needs. A government that even makes us proud to say, you know what, we are Kenyans and those are our leaders. So what next? But then that is never going to happen if we don't do our part. So kudos to Senator Crystal. She is showing that, you know what, new people that have not been in these spaces can come in and imagine they can do it. We kind of just need to take a chance on them.
We do.
Yeah, we kind of just need to take a chance on them, because those are the people that are going to come in and change the system. It's going to be so difficult to have the same people who've been in the system, some now 30 years plus. It's going to be very difficult for some of these people to change. So the best thing that we can do is bringing as many fresh and new ideas as possible. And then going back to the 2/3 gender role, I think we definitely cannot finish this episode before we acknowledge Phoebe Asio, who unfortunately passed away this past month in July. I mean, Phoebe really, she worked hard a lot to get us where we are with the 2/3 gender rule. She was championing for affirmative action even before affirmative action was a term in the late 90s. She was already trying to push for even, with the ratings when it comes to education, just making sure that those that, like, we have some balance to make sure that even those that, even though they're not the top performers, they still get access to education in the way that needs to happen. I know that that didn't pass at that time. However, she started from there, and she was the first Black chairperson of Maendeleo ya Wanawake. This was like in the 50s or 60s, I believe. So, I mean, Phoebe really set the path for us to be able to even say that we have a constitution that really has the 2/3 gender rule written in it. You know, some of these things, even a document saying that, it's such a huge win, leave alone even when it comes to the practice.
And she defied odds to run for office.
True.
And because she won that Karachuonyo MP seat, I mean, man, hats off to that woman. She was vying against the support of Moi, who was such a powerful president and operating in an independent constitution environment, which of course did not have the privileges and the rights that we have right now. And she won. She won. And so by paying tribute to her, we want to say, we encourage every young woman as well, women in politics, and we say that we actually see you and we hope that you keep going, and we hope that you also have the courage to beat and defy this system that is actually not so encouraging for women. I wanted to add something on this point of Senator Crystal. I think it speaks a lot about political parties and the role of political parties in making sure that we're championing and proposing progressive bills. If Crystal was not a member of ODM, she would not be in Senate right now. Probably. And so, that then raises the question of, are you a member of a political party? I know I'm not, and I'm looking for a political party. And I've made peace with the fact that I can no longer run away from politics. I have to be actively involved in politics. And so it's not just about cheering on people who are doing great things inside the game. It's also asking ourselves, what am I doing in my part? How can I support such a progressive senator to even create awareness about such a bill, which is so important? How can we tell more stories of people who are doing progressive things and they're rarely seen because they don't have access to some of these opportunities? So the Constitution, again, allows for multi-partyism, which is so important. And again, it goes back to checks and balances. Unfortunately, even what we see and the people that we are calling the opposition right now in Kenya are not like the most progressive people. I mean, they spend most of the time politicking and not really actually going back to the Constitution to say, this and this is what the Constitution says in terms of the power of the people. And so because of that, then we have to go back to the drawing board. Even when I look at the whole process of the Building Bridges initiative, I mean, we had been wasting a lot of time, cutting corners, talking about the law and all that. And then all of a sudden, people who are not even in the so-called opposition were the ones who came in and said, this is what the law says. And because of that, we have to go back. So
how much money was wasted?
So
and then you're coming to tell us you don't have money for free education.
So much money, So anyway. There's a lot that needs to be done. What about the 2010 Constitution is your biggest highlight? Like, I know we've mentioned so many. What is the one thing that you would like somebody watching this episode to take away from this conversation?
I think we've already alluded to it. For me, the biggest highlight of the 2010 Constitution is how it really laid out our rights, because the previous Constitution was not as comprehensive when it came to laying down or addressing all our rights. I mean, the 2010 Constitution has the Bill of Rights in it. And let me tell you, that Bill of Rights is the reason why Pasaris had to say, you know what, let this thing go back to the drawing board, because how are you trying to tell us that our right to picket, which is in this Constitution, you want to make sure that even if it's picketing, there must be some places that are protected. But even those places that you're trying to protect, one, we are the one who put you there. Two, they are public property. So then, while I can understand maybe her intention there was to make sure there's no destruction of property, I don't know whether that really reflects our rights and liberties, because then what that means is, if you're trying to say nobody can ever picket anywhere outside of Parliament, even that road, leave alone even getting close to the gate or even the fence, if you're trying to say that, that means that in future when parliamentarians make another mistake, we cannot come close to them and remind them, please, today when you're voting, we are outside here waiting to see you embarrass us. You know the way when you're speaking in front of people and your mother is there just looking at you, threatening you. That's what they're trying to get rid of, basically.
Yeah.
And it's our duty to keep you in check. It's our duty to remind you, you know what, today you're voting, please make sure that 1, 2, 3 is factored in. And I think for me, some of these things, I mean, even for her to be able to suggest this bill, it's going back to our constitution and the freedoms that it gives. That you have freedom of expression to be able to say, you know what, this is a bill that I want to propose. So I think that for the 2010 Constitution, it has brought so many opportunities for us as citizens to be like, this is not right. And that's because it's expounded on a lot. It's really expounded on the responsibilities of the leaders that get in. It's expounded on our duties. It's expounded on all the things that we deserve. It's given us something to be able to fall back on when it comes to accountability, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to how resources are being utilized in this country. So one of the things that we need to make sure is that we safeguard it, because if we let all those things sort of be affected, be gotten rid of, you know, like ideally, I feel like some of the things this politician says just to test the waters. Even with when the CS was talking about us not being able to afford the education, I was like, excuse me, what do you mean? Like, I kind of feel like some of these things are just being said to test the waters, and now is the time for us to be alert, because we have to protect our nation. We have to protect the resources that we so work hard for. And we work hard for these resources, and sometimes we don't see where they're going. And it's so painful, because even at a personal level, when you get your salary, you try and make sure that you spend your money well. You think about, how do I save? How do I make sure I'm able to do X, Y, Z? And to be honest, that is what the government should be doing with our money. So for me to come and hear things like we are in debt because of X, Y, Z, so we can't do X, Y, Z, it goes back to poor planning. It goes back to just a lot of things, which then remind me that this constitution is very, very important. Also, it's only been 15 years. To be honest, that's not a lot of time. I mean,
it's actually 15 years since promulgation, but 12 years since we started to implement.
So then it's actually not been enough time. And we already know one of the biggest challenges has been we've not had progressive leaders. So maybe how about we put in some progressive leaders and see how this constitution takes us before people try and change things about it.
And the thing is, they don't do it for free. They don't serve the public for free. We pay tax for these people to serve us and serve us right. And my biggest highlight from the 2010 Constitution is that, again, like you said, we the people, that it puts people first, that sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. And for that, then you have your right to speak, you have your right to raise issues and protest and picket, and nobody should take that away from you. And there are independent institutions that actually exist through which you can challenge some of these things, through which some of these things can be challenged. I mean, we even have an independent commission that is charged with equality and non-discrimination. So quite a progressive constitution that we definitely should guard and protect. This is, when we passed the constitution, when we voted for the constitution, it was our second liberation to actually claim back our rights and make sure that everybody is served. And we are still so far from making sure that everybody is served. Children are still not going to school because they cannot afford it. children are going to school hungry because they don't have food in school. I think every school should be able to feed.
Yeah.
And surely we are such a rich country, abundant with resources. And so we must ask ourselves very hard questions about governance.
True.
That said, happy 15 years of our Katiba, and salute to every person, every leader, every citizen that is doing their best to make sure that our constitution holds and that the law is very clear.
Yeah. And to celebrate this week and this important day to commemorate, please go ask, whether it's ChatGPT, Google, whoever you depend upon. You know, these days we have digital besties. Just go and learn something new about the Constitution that you had not checked out. It's very, very important. In fact, the Constitution is like what a Bible is to Christians. You know, the way you say my house has to have a Bible, or at least I have to be reading the Bible, you need to be reading the Constitution. So to just commemorate this day, this week, please go and read something. Just remind yourself of why that document is important. And as you do that, make sure that you share with at least one other person. Let's have an enlightened Kenya so that we have a better Kenya.
Thank you so much for joining. We hope that you can also find time to subscribe, like, share with your friends and family, and let's keep learning together. Bye-bye.